I know what you're thinking. Damn, Dr. Cho, that last lecture was really long. I know what you're thinking. Dang, Dr. Cho, that last lecture was really long. I thought these videos were supposed to be 5 to 7 minutes, and yeah, I'm guilty. Um, the thing is, I could reshoot it and break it into three smaller pieces or something like that, but you could just quit in the middle and then come back to it. The reason why they do that is because supposedly that's your attention span, and I told them, look, I can't do that. I tell stories. The thing is, I could save a lot of time by just saying, and your early adopters form your cult. There I'd be done. But the thing is, my story about the ham and all, you're going to remember that ham story a heck of a lot longer. It gives you the idea of what the cult is about than me just saying, and your early adopters form your cult. And that's the thing about a lot of business and classes. They tell you what, and they just tell you, but they don't dig into the details. They don't do rigor, so you kind of understand and get the feel for what something is. So, going back to our lecture on price, we're now up to competition. And so this is where company, especially if you want to be the price leader, what do? You fight over price. And so all of a sudden line extensions and things like that come out. The thing about new products is what do? You discourage entrants. You want to lock them out of the market. And guess what? What a very common thing to do in technology is once you hit the market, if they think you're for real, they will drop the price on you. Basically, there's a lot of competition in the world that will grab you by the neck, stick your head underwater, laugh at you while you struggle, and really get a big laugh as the last breath out of you floats away. The thing about new products is you defend your space. You defend your space by creating things such as high switching costs. That's what the cell phone carriers do. That's why they say, oh, there's a $600 penalty if you want to enter a contract early or whatever. Also, network effects keep you home. The thing is, when you think about defense, you think about, okay, how are they going to respond to us? Are there price points that I can potentially attack? Like, do they have a gap in their products that I can get into? And how are they going to respond to me? And so price tiers get very competitive and it gets very brutal. But the thing you find is that in terms of price tiers, the fight within a tier is much more greater than what's across, meaning people will fight over bowls that both count $10, but the $10 and $30 bowl are going to probably not fight. And that kind of makes sense because the $10 bowl and the $30 bowl are differentiated. It's when you don't have differentiation that you get into fights. There's also something called an asymmetric effect, and that's that the higher tiers can go after the lower tiers, but the lower tiers can't move up to the higher tiers. For example, BMW can come out with a cheaper car, and they can rebrand it like BMW Every Day or something like that, and people will flock to it because it's BMW. On the other hand, if Hyundai said, we were going to make a BMW level car, well, no, you're not going to actually buy it. People are inclined to buy good products at cheaper prices than cheap products at higher prices. And that's called the asymmetric effect. And so you have to think about, do you want price leadership or coordination, or do you want price war? And if you end up in a price war, where your competition starts cutting the price on you, don't overreact. Typically, what elasticity says, if they cut the price by 10%, you cut it 7.1%, and the customer will view that as the same. The thing is, advertising elasticity, and there are different numbers. Before I showed you a number 0.22, there's also another advertising number that came out 0.38. Either way, it's low. And that's the thing about advertising is, what is it that you are advertising? What message are you sending across? How personalized, how targeted it is? There's lots of ways that advertising doesn't work. The thing is, when you watch TV or whatever, do you remember what they were selling something for? I mean, the best ad campaigns, like Geico, you remember what Geico is about. Dos Equis, which my wife calls Dos Equis, beer, the most interesting man in the world. And that's the thing, they had a great line at the end. When I drink beer, it's Dos Equis. You remember that. The thing is, how the competition responds will also depend on all the factors that go into the landscape, things like elasticity, complements, everything else. The big thing where you can have the least damage is if you can have price leadership. And the thing built into price leadership is also the values of your products. You're differentiated. You understand the competition. The thing about competitors' reactions is do you tip them off? Is there an indication that you're going to do certain things? For example, I went into an interview, and I always read the financial reports before I go in because it tells me a lot about the company. And they asked me, well, what do you think of our company? And I told them, well, I was looking at your financial reports and you're hoarding cash now, which pretty much tells me that you're going to make an acquisition. And I said, well, go on. And then I just said, well, you have factories in the Philippines and Korea and Japan. You don't have it in Vietnam and China. And I just kept going on and on. Oh my God, you're going to acquire Company X. And the guy just looked at me and he wouldn't say anything. But the thing is, what they were doing and their strategy and everything else, I was actually correct. But Dr. Cho was an idiot. He should have bought stock. The thing is, if U.S. Airways, and here's some examples, if U.S. Airways cuts its fare, is United going to follow? Is Southwest going to follow? Well, United will probably follow, and that's what these big companies do. They just kind of keep themselves on par with each other. Southwest, on the other hand, doesn't cut their prices, and the reason why is we have a differentiated product. We're perceived as being different from you, and so we constantly have low price. We're perceived as the price leader. When you're perceived as a price leader, you don't have to cut your price. That's what I'm talking about. Ford comes out with an electric car. Should Tesla cut their prices? No, Tesla's got a much stronger brand than Ford in the electric car field. Why should they? And the thing is, if Apple decides to cut the price on its iPhone, does Samsung do the same thing? It depends where the price is. In all likelihood, Samsung will do it just because they have more elasticity. I mean, that's the biggest reason why you buy a Samsung phone, because it's cheaper than the Apple phone. And if you lose that, then you've lost your differentiation. In terms of the company, you have to think about when you have price changes, how does it change you internally? If I've got a price change, what does that do to my production? If I have a price change, how much cash do I have in the bank in case this goes bad and I have to weather it out? And in terms of marketing, how are you going to formulate a response? In terms of collaborators, are there people that can help you in your supply chain, middlemen? How much loyalty do they have to us? Meaning, are they going to jump ship at the first sign that somebody will pay them more? And that happens all the time. One company will be doing this with another company, and a third party will come in and steal them away. How do you want them to play a role in your response in terms of context, world financial issues, the environment? Is there volatile factors such as fashion? I mean, in gaming, everybody had a Wii. The Wii was a really big thing, and then the Wii just died. Because everybody else came out with their gaming systems similar to the Wii. Are there like government or geopolitical effects that can affect things? If you remember this came from our customer part, but I'm showing it again. These are different economic theories. that impact pricing, such as switching cost effect. If the switching costs are higher, the buyer is going to be less elastic. Um, in terms of technique summaries, we also showed this before. Do I want to gain market share? There's a psychological effect. You can go high-low, meaning you could price it high, but then use discounts to bring it down. Again, you set the reference point high. There is a digital effect. You don't end your prices on even numbers. You can have decoys too high, one low. But anyway, you can read through these, and these are different techniques that people use in terms of pricing. When we look at margin, different products have different kinds of margin. Semiconductors have a price according to cost-based pricing. However, Intel, even though it's a semiconductor, has a higher profit margin. And the reason why is because branding. They're not selling based on cost-based pricing. They're selling based on perception. In consumer electronics, look at Apple. Apple, because of its value. Consumer electronics are extremely bloody. I mean, I think Sony has something like $50 or $75 billion of sales a year, but their profit margin sucks. They're pretty close to break even. And that's because consumer electronics is just so damn price sensitive. You get really bled, but Apple's managed to create a brand to separate themselves, and so they can get away with it. And then you look at pharmaceutical companies. Well, how many of you have heard of Teva Pharmaceuticals? How many of you have heard of Johnson & Johnson? So you can see how you can get away from cost-based pricing and actually get into value-based pricing. And that gets into branding, which we'll get to. In terms of startups, the thing you should do when you think about your pricing and everything is look at your landscape and think about what are the opportunities. Like collaborators, can we bundle with someone? What's my competitor's pricing? Essentially, it's a good framework to get started. So the thing about being a startup is you start off with your landscape, do your hypothesis, be aware of what reference points exist. What is my minimum? What is the bottom price I can sell at? The bottom price you can always sell at is based on what return on investment or margin do I need to make money. And that's the thing. Some of the startups I advise, I tell them, okay, well, how much does this cost? Because that's going to create the lowest price, basically with a 50% margin that we're going to be able to sell at. Go out and get your data and think about how is your pricing going to change over time. Like when you first get out there, you're probably going to be able to charge more. But then competition will take place and everything like that, and your price will drop like a rock. You have to be prepared for that. And so some common pricing models, like physical products, pre-selling, volume discounting. That's what I mean by a pricing model. Software, you can say you could use it for a week and we'll only charge you this much. I mean, a lot of sites, well, I charge you $1 because they want you to try it for 3 days. And also in terms of services, say I have a digital marketing service. I'm going to help people make their websites and their social media and everything else. And am I going to base it on hourly work or am I going to base it on tranches? And that's the milestones. Like when you get the website done, you get paid this much. When you get my Instagram up, you get paid this much. That's what that is. And so as you can see, these are the different approaches based on different products of how you go ahead and price. But what is the bottom line of all of this is that pricing is about perception of value. And that perception shapes everything, elasticity, biases, everything else. And this is what I was talking about. This is how do corporations do their pricing? They do economics and modeling. And that's what they look at the supply and demand curve and see where do they cross. And that's where they start out with. The thing is, this works well for niches. And the reason why it works well for niches is because there's a history there. You know how that market responds and how that market acts. For gaps in startups, this kind of economic modeling probably doesn't work very well. In fact, most cases it doesn't work well at all. For the simple reason that there is no historical data to go off of. And so this is a perceptual map telling everything you about pricing. Pricing affects the entire marketing mix. The thing about pricing is get data. And here are the different ways you can go ahead and get data, inform pricing, and subsequently, based on that data, I can start thinking about how I'm going to design my pricing, whether I'm cost, what the 5 C's are telling me. And then once I have that, once I have my inputs, then I can decide my output. Am I pricing for offense, such as creating high switching costs for them or fill gaps? Or am I pricing this for defense, meaning I'm just responding to what someone else does or just filling gaps? And so essentially this entire lecture is just summarized here in this map.